Welcome to the Comic Stands podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Matt Lesniewski, and I draw comics.
And as a guy who draws comics, how do you usually describe? Is that the way you usually describe what you do? Or are you a comic artist? Are you a cartoonist? Do you call yourself a comic book illustrator?
Uh, I, to be fair, I usually don't really tell people anything. I don't. I'm not usually somebody to, you know. I don't know. I'm not. I'm actually. I don't know if I'm overthinking this question, but for the longest time, I never even told people what it is that I do, and I just kept it a secret. Uh, and only in the past few years, I've been telling people, "Oh yeah, I draw comics," and then from that, there's a whole other list of questions that come. But I don't know. I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. But I guess I just tell them I just say I'm an artist or comic book artist. But I also write. But at the same time, I'm not. I don't think of myself as a real writer. I guess um, I can write for myself, and I've actually just started trying to dabble into writing for other artists. That hasn't been too successful yet, but it's something I'm hoping to do in the future, because one comic alone, when you're writing and drawing it, can take just about all of your time. But I have other stories I want to tell, so my hope is that I can get other artists to draw those stories for me and just collaborate. But to make a long story short, yeah, I guess I'm an artist. I'm an artist first, because that's what I've been doing the longest, and I'm just kind of a writer by accident. If that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what got you into comics?
Um, they were just a part of life from as early as I can remember. My dad had a collection, and he's a fan of comics. Well, not so much anymore, I guess, but just like food or you know any other regular object you'd find around the house, comics were also an ordinary object. I didn't think of them as something different or weird or something not everyone had until I got to a certain age and I realized, oh, I'm actually the only one who reads these. Because when I got to probably kindergarten, I remember it was normal to draw. That was completely acceptable, and a lot of kids would draw. Just you'd have a lot of free time, as I remember it. But one time I was drawing Batman, uh, just for no reason, and I kind of got made fun of for because I was drawing a superhero, and it was a comic book thing, but I thought it was completely normal. And ever since then, I just hid it. I hid the whole comic book thing. I Right at that moment, it was a turning point. Like, oh, I guess comic books aren't cool. Comic books are something I shouldn't. When I put that out there, I'm not getting a good response. I'm not getting, so I drawing was okay. Comic books were not okay. So I hid comic books until, well, like I said, probably the last few years. But yeah, your original question, how did I get into comics? Yeah, my dad, he had comic books. They were always around, and naturally, I don't remember getting into them. I was just always attracted to. It was the art first, because it was before I could actually read. So I would follow the stories. I was drawn in by the covers, as most of us are, and but yeah, I'd have my own small collection, and the art is what really drew me in, and I knew from a very young age. I don't know. I think I was able to just, like most people, I assume you can tell someone's drawing these things. It's through this company. Oh, DC Comics. I guess it must be a job, and I have to have a job. I have to make money to survive, and it's just I guess it's the way the world works. So why not make my job a thing that I enjoy? And from whatever the age that was, it could have been 8 years old. I don't know. I just knew. I kept it in the back of my head, like I'm going to do this. I don't know what that's going to take or what avenue I have to go down to make that happen, but I know that is a job, and everything else just seems terrible. Like I don't want to be, hammering things or selling things, or I don't know what, but that stuck out to me as the thing I wanted to do, or one of a few things I probably wanted to do. So, yeah, yeah.
Now you mentioned DC Comics and you mentioned drawing Batman. Was that what you grew up seeing? Is that what your dad had?
Um, yeah, I don't know why. I didn't have a ton of comics, and I'd have to kind of reread and just go back to the ones I had. But for whatever reason, that's what I happened to have. He actually the earliest ones I remember. He had um, a lot of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, and that is probably the first covers that I saw that really drew me in, and I was just hooked. Whatever this is, I need to find out what this is. I need to be a part of this. I need to investigate. And but he also had like Sergeant Rock, which I've never been into military anything, so that never that never interested me at all. But even I think a lot of comic book fa- um, comic book fans, they think of themselves as, oh, I'm a Marvel kid or I'm a DC kid, but it's not that. I don't think of myself as either. I just earlier on, that's all I knew comics to be, and for up until up until when I tried to break in is when I started to discover um, other types of comics. But for the longest time, that's all I knew them to be. So
Was Todd McFarlane one of the earliest artists that you gravitated towards?
yeah, for sure. Um, he might be the first, because if I'm going back to the earliest memories of comics I can think of, that I remember my dad had a long box of his collection, and he was pulling out certain comics, and those covers, they jumped out at me, and I just still remember them, like all the detail and the exaggerations and just the quality of how the art looked. Um, it just sticks in my head. Like also another really early one, probably one of the covers that still to this day left a mark on me. It was a Kelly Jones Batman cover. I don't remember the exact number, but it was I believe it was in the Nightfall storyline, and it was Batman, but he was deranged, and he was something was wrong with him, and it was showing him in a light that you don't see him normally in at all. He was exaggerated. He was in the foreground. You see him with um, it was a board with a nail in it or something like that, and he was kind of standing over this bad guy, I guess, all beaten up, and then in the background you see Robin, and he's just horrified, and that image, it just struck me, like it just stuck in my mind. And I think the thing that stuck out to me most was um, it was an interpretation of a character that we all know and love, but in a way that I'd never seen it before. And I think that's something that um, I've taken with me to this day. Like that's something that I really gravitate towards. And I'm, for example, when I'm trying to do commissions or covers or something like that, I just try to do my own take or my own view. I don't like replicating. Um, a lot of people like the I don't know the exact name, but I guess they're like parody covers or swipes where everyone knows what I mean. It's where you take a famous cover and you kind of do your own take on that. But that never has interested me in any way. It's the most boring, uninteresting. I'm not knocking it, but me as a fan, I see it and I instantly go away from that. I just do something. I'd rather you try something new and fail, which I don't know what failing would be in that case, but just try anything new. I'm gonna not only be drawn to that more, but I'll respect it more. Um, so yeah, that's that's that ramble.
R- Ramble
Session.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you end up going to school for art?
No, I thought about it. I thought about maybe the Joe Kubert school, um, but I just uh, no, I mostly just right. I forget the actual timeline, but it was somewhere between the first couple of years after high school. At that point, remember I said, "Oh, I'm gonna try to break into comics, so that's gonna be my job." Um, but it was just kind of this fantasy thing in the back of my head. It wasn't real. I was still very much a kid. I still kind of am, but after high school, now it's like reality started to set in. Like, no, this I need to actually take steps to make this happen, and I'm not sure what the steps are. It seems very vague and it's not clear. There's no clear path. There's no, oh, just apply here and well, they put it out there like it is. Like, oh, we have a submissions thing, but that never works. I've never heard of it working. You have to find some backdoor entrance or know somebody or you know within reason. But yeah, I just spent years. I would send little submissions, like maybe 5 pages of a fake made up story I made just to show, oh, these are my chops. This is what I have to offer as an artiste. Um, but that never got me anywhere because number one, I wasn't very good, but also number two, I wasn't making comics, which through the years of trying that, I realized that's what I should have been doing. And eventually I did. But yeah, it was just years in isolation, practicing drawing hands, drawing faces, drawing a million faces. Before I even tried drawing comics, it was just trying to be a better artist because I thought it took me a while to actually realize, oh, this is storytelling. This isn't how good of an artist am I. It's but early, very, very early on, I thought, oh, I'll be the best artist I can be, and I can show that. If they can see how good I am, well, they just give me a job. Um, which again, that's 19, 20-year-old me, not very smart, still not very smart, but I just didn't know any better. And there wasn't much that I saw of a guideline or there was no one to hold your hand and go, oh, this is what you should do. These are the steps you should take. So I was just kind of blindly doing what I thought would get me somewhere. But yeah, it was just trial and error. I didn't go to a school or anything. Um, yeah, I just tried my own thing.
I'm curious, how did you learn your technique?
Um, Mostly through practicing. I mean, I know that's probably not the best answer, but it really is. Of course, I am influenced by other artists. I'm a fan of this. I love it. I love comics. It's the reason I'm doing it. I've dedicated everything to it. But so I draw from other artists, whether I like it or not. But I didn't. I don't really. I try not to look at things directly and study and directly borrow or steal, whatever you want to call it. But I've learned the most, I think, through the act of actually drawing, and you don't really realize that until you're actually doing it. Like, oh, you know, it is. You're not going to find anything new in a book because it's already been done. Whether it's the smallest little thing, the smallest little texture or a technique, or you know, it, even through Crimson Flower, which is a new one of the newer things I have out. Through probably the second or third issue, I had a real breakthrough in that just through doing the book itself. So I never feel like I've arrived at a style. I feel like I'm just I'm continually trying new things because I'm spending so much time with this that if I just maybe some other artists aren't the same, but for me, if I'm constantly drawing things with the same technique or the same texture or the same style, it gets boring really quickly, and it feels like I'm just mimicking myself. It begins to feel like work because the instant it's not fun, or I'm not trying new things, or I'm trying to explore a new way of rendering a jacket or something. Um, that's when I feel like I'm just doing it wrong. I'm not in the right direction. But so yeah, I'm constantly just trying to move forward. What's next? Like, what else can I do? How else can I keep this exciting for myself? Because it has to be. If it's not, then it's going to show. I feel like that it just radiates off the page if you're having fun or not. Well, yeah, whether you have to make yourself have fun with it or not, you still have to try to make it fun. You have to try to make, for me at least. So yeah, it's mainly through just endlessly drawing, but I'm obsessed with it. So that's so yeah, I don't really feel like I've found my technique. I'm just I could just keep moving forward, and who knows, maybe one day I will get to a point where I decide I've landed on a place that I'm happy with. I like what I'm doing here. This is my technique. I found my voice, or my, but I think my voice is just being myself. And if you're being yourself, you're not just going to be the same all the time. I would like to think that you're constantly evolving or constantly trying to improve in whatever way you can. So my art should be no different. My art should be changing as well. So yeah, I don't see that happening, but it could happen. But I don't think I've found my technique, but it's for where I'm at right now, or where I've been. It's just through the act of drawing. I'm going what feels good, what seems fun, what you know I'm not trying to make it. I'm not trying to make things look good. If that makes sense. I'm just. It's honestly selfish. It just happens to be. Some people enjoy it. Some people don't. It's fine. Either way is fine. It's just I'm doing it for myself more than anything. And then if anyone else likes it, that's awesome. If they don't, that's fine too. Um, yeah. I, I, hopefully that answers the question.
I'd like to, if you can expand on something that you mentioned. How do you make something fun? How do you make a page or a panel fun?
That's the ultimate question. Because even if it's a script that I wrote, you'd think, oh, I'm gonna write whatever I think is most fun to draw, but not necessarily. For me, it's the story kind of it's the most important thing over anything else. So if the story calls for something I'm not exactly excited to draw, um, like it could be the most ordinary thing that could be fun. It could not be fun, but let's say it's a microwave, and I'm not exactly looking forward to drawing that, or I don't know. I'll use a better example. A lot of people don't like drawing backgrounds or cities or anything like that. And for the longest time, I hated it. I didn't enjoy it. But it's because kind of going back to what I said, it's because I wasn't being myself with the art. I was doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing. I was either looking at what buildings really look like, or I was looking at what other people were drawing buildings like. And I thought that's how backgrounds are. That's what I should do. But then I realized, wait, no, I should just be kind of spontaneous with this the way that I am with everything else. There's no right or wrong with unless the script calls for an exact location, like, oh, this is France, this is this time period, it needs to be this type of architecture, which that's not fun. For me, like I don't like that. Feels like homework. That feels like, oh, I need to study and I need to look. Feels like I'm replicating something that already exists. Whereas I like to just create. I want to. It's not tied to any exact time period or place or setting. It's so I just try to keep an open mind with everything and think going with an attitude of why instead of why not. Why not draw this particular section of a building with this material or this texture? Just keep an open mind. Just whatever feels fun. Try to whatever you think you're going to enjoy, as long as it makes sense with the story. Try to look at it that way. Or and this is what the biggest thing that can really stall me with, especially with commissions and that kind of thing, which is why I'm trying to, if I can, not really do those as much, because I'm not passionate about that. I don't care to draw someone else's character or you know something that I have no connection to. I don't care about it at all. So I have to try to convince myself that there's a way to draw this that I'm going to be excited about. So I could spend an entire day thinking about it, just thinking, what's a fun pose? What's a fun scenario? What's a fun? It kind of all goes back to fun. Like, what am I going to really enjoy? I'm spending all these hours bringing this to life. Well, I hope I can enjoy it. So I really don't know what. I don't know. Maybe I kind of answer that in the question, but it's hard to not everything. I'm not able to find a fun way for everything, but that's what I'm trying to do. And if you have a deadline, you don't always have time to do that. So you might have to just in the moment think of something. But then also that urgency to get things done, that can kind of fuel your need to make it what it needs to be. So it I don't know. It all comes from the imagination. It all comes from the mind. Everything is from the mind, whether that's a positive or a negative for me. Like it, I could either be my own worst enemy or my best, you know, best best friend, I guess. I don't know. Whatever the opposite of that is, opposite of the worst enemy. But it's all about how you look at it. Like you could look at, oh, I have to draw this printer. That's so boring. Well, try to look at it in a way that would be fun for you to draw. Like look at it. Maybe I can kind of alter the way people would expect it to be, or the way it is in reality. I'll draw it with kind of a unique texture or a unique uh, approach to lighting it, or a different shape than we might expect or we've seen before. So just try to look at it from different angles. It really all goes back to that Batman cover. That something in me looked at that, and that spoke to me more than any other cover, because it wasn't what you expected. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen. It was strange. It was different. It was new. So now I try to something that's what I connect to. I don't know why, but ever since that young age, it that's stuck with me. That way of viewing things. Like, how can I draw a pencil that's fun or different, or in a way that I'm going to want to draw it. So,
Now, are you working on paper or are you working on digital, or are you going back and forth between the two?
um, fully on paper, that's just what works best for me. There was a maybe a year where I, like, probably 6 7 years ago, that I actually tried on working on a tablet, but I just wasn't getting the results I wanted. And I also I felt myself becoming a worse artist using that approach. Uh, and I have nothing against digital art at all. It's a perfectly viable tool. You still have to, I have nothing against it. But for me, there were so many shortcuts that I was able to take that I found myself, like I said, I was getting weaker. Whereas on paper, let's say I draw a hand and oh, it's a little bit too big. I have to erase it and draw it. Now, I'm spending more time, but I'm getting in those reps. I'm getting in that practice. Every single time I draw something wrong or not what's best for the story, I try to view it like I got more practice. Every pencil stroke, every line, every hour I spent moving that lead across the paper, I'm improving. Every single It's like I'm in the gym. I'm getting more reps in. Whereas if I'm working digitally, I can draw a face. Let's say it's facing this direction. All I have to do is, if I want it the other direction, I can just put I don't know, I guess it's a lasso or whatever that tool is. And with a couple of clicks, I can just flip it. I didn't have to do that work. You save time, but you didn't get that rep in. You didn't get that work in. So in the long run, when I'm working on paper, I have to do everything the long way. So now in the long run, I'm actually a stronger artist because I've done more work, and I'm now able to, of course I make mistakes or I draw things in a way that isn't best the first time, but I think I do it less because I've had that much more practice redrawing, and I don't mind it. I really don't mind it because I know, like I said, every time I do it, I'm just getting better. And I noticed in myself when I was working digitally, I could just shrink a hand down because it was too big, or make it bigger because it was too small, or rotate it. Whereas on paper, I need to completely restart it, and I don't. I just think it's, and then on top of that, I just like the feel of it. It reminded me of being a kid, getting out some, colored pencils or crayons or whatever, and just holding a paper. And I like that feel. That's a feel that I never want to lose, which is just, you know, I liked knowing that with comics, all you needed, you could grab a sheet of paper, grab a pen, grab a pencil with an eraser. That's all you need. And you could be anywhere. You could be in a cave. You could be, on a mountain. You could be in a city. You could be in a cabin. You could be anywhere in the world. As long as you have those simple tools, you can make a comic. And it's, you can't do that with anything else, really. And I just like that feel, that you know, and I like the way it looks too. It just, you can kind of replicate it in with digital tools, but it's just not the same for me. And there's so many errors too that are kind of errors that I'm happy with, and it adds to the overall feeling of the drawing. Like what I just said, it feels like somebody just grabbed a sheet of paper, a pen, and they just made something happen. And if there are mistakes, that's fine because it's human, it's real, and digital art is real too. But if I made a mistake, I have to either live with it, fix it, go over it, white it out, something. I need to do something with that. It's a real problem. Now I have to address that problem. Whereas digital, I can just make it go away, undo, and that's fine again. But it just wasn't for me. So yeah, paper, love paper. It's one of my favorite things. So
So are you going uh, pencils on the page to ink? Are you doing roughs on the page, or are you doing like full pencils?
um, I do thumbnails. I do usually do a full script, thumbnails, and I do pencil. But I pencil pretty loosely, and I go panel by panel. Like I typically don't pencil an entire page for multiple reasons. But yeah, I tend to just get the shapes. For example, in a character, I just kind of do the shapes and the clothing, but I don't do any of the texture or lighting. I like to keep that with the inking phase because it's more spontaneous that way, and I can have fun and figure it out in the moment. Um, so yeah, I do pencil, but it's just enough information so that I have a skeleton to work on, and then I can just go over that.
Now, in terms of your inking, are you using brushes? Are you using nibs? Are you using technical pens?
Um, no, I pretty much only use microns.
Okay.
It's just what I prefer, and I like the simplicity of it. It's it's a very predictable line for the most part. And, I think we all know what they look like, but here's one of them. That's probably 95% of what I use. I feel freer to experiment knowing what the line I'm putting down is going to look like. So I don't have two things that I'm juggling. I'm just juggling the experimentation or the unpredictability of what I'm about to do. How am I going to render this face? How am I going to render this chair? I'm just worried about that. I don't need to worry about, oh, is this ink gonna spill all over, or I don't care about that. That's why worry about that if I don't have to. And then I do also use, this is probably the second more frequent tool that I use. It's a Kuretake.
It's like a brush pen, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Except this one, it's kind of a hybrid. Like it's a cross. It's the perfect cross between a marker and a pen, but it gives you a thick enough line. I could actually just show an example for people seeing the video. It gives you a thick enough line to where you can fill in areas with black, or you can kind of go fine with it and get some precise lines too. So I use that sometimes, and then if I really want to fill in an area, I use the Pilot. What is this called? Pilot. This thing. Pilot. Yeah, that's what I use to ink.
Is that like a nib pen? The Pilot
Oh
nib pen?
no, this is more of a brush pen.
Okay.
It's and it's not refillable, they're just disposable, but I don't mind that. I don't want to waste time refilling and doing all that stuff. And they're pretty cheap, and they last quite a while. So
One of the more impressive aspects of your style to me, especially on the Freak, is actually your draftsmanship, your perspective drawing. Where did you learn that?
well, thank you, but uh, that came a little bit later, because like I said, those earlier years I just spent doing like anatomy and trying to draw people and stuff like that and just be a good artist, because I thought that's all I needed, as stupid as that was. But then I realized, oh wait, I need to put these people in environments. I need to put them in worlds, for obvious reasons, that you need to learn that. So where did I learn that? I mean, I definitely learned it through trial and error of, I still don't have it down completely, but I just realized, I don't know where I learned it. I really don't, because it was so far back, but I just learned the basic. First, it was just the 1 point perspective. Like, you just get 1 point. Okay, I guess this is a good example. It's this panel right here. Is that on camera?
Yep.
I somewhere along the way, I just learned all I need to do is a horizontal line where the point will be somewhere on there where everything is going to. I just learned that by looking at. I probably just got it from looking at other art. I realized, oh wait, this is all going to one point, and then everything else, every other line is just a grid. vertical and horizontal lines. So there are three like faces, or three. I don't have the terminology down. I'm completely pretty much self-taught, so I don't have the terminology down. It's certain lines are all going to this one point, and that's all I needed to know. I could just use that as a tool. I could place that anywhere. And then along the way, I realized, oh wait, now there's 2 point. So I could have one thing all going to one point, and another going to the other point, but all in the same horizontal line. And that kind of adds another perspective, I guess. And then I also learned you can also you can do grids, like different. Here's a I use this. I don't know what you'd call this, a triangle, something like that. Uh, you can set up like let's say I'm trying to. I can find a better example of this in the book. Uh,
If you want,
when he's
just give me the page number, and I'll cut to it in the video.
it's not numbered, but I'll just show you the page. It's the page where he's in the store. This panel right here.
Yeah. Okay.
You can see, you can kind of visualize if I was to just pencil that. It's just a grid, and you can use that. There are vertical lines, and then two different. Essentially, I just realized I can just set the triangle. I don't know if you're seeing this, and just trace lines like boom, 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 boom. That's one. Then boom, boom, boom. Then vertical too for these lines here. And now I have like a space I can work in, and I can just place everything in it. Really, what it is, it is all going to a point, but it's a million miles away. But it's so far away that you can't tell that there's like an angle to it, if that makes any sense. So it's just another way of setting up kind of like the camera, I guess. But yeah, probably through looking at other art, and I figured it out somehow. I don't know. And then just practice again. I sound like a broken record, but it's true. It's cliche, but it's true.
It's
Trying
Malcolm
it.
it's Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right? It's like the more time
Yeah.
you put into something, the closer you get to being an expert.
Right. Right.
So with the amount of detail that you put into a page, or even just into each panel, how long does it take you to finish a page? Like, let's say from you already have your layout, your roughs, you already have your thumbnails. From pencils to inks, how long does it take you to finish a page?
It depends on the book. Because certain ones I would have a different approach. Um, like the freak, I was doing that in between other jobs, so I'm not sure. Like I might have time at the end of the night to just do one panel, and that might have been. It really depends, but it could be 4 hours. I don't know. It really depends how big it is, how much is there. Uh, but like with static, there's a double page spread. I mean, that example is probably the most extreme, but that took me like a week. If people have the book, they'll know what I mean. This double page spread where we go down into the lab for the first time, and I just remember I was putting a texture on this shelf, and it took me like an hour just to do that, and then start to wonder if I'm crazy or not. or just how crazy I am. But oh, you said a page. A page. Yeah, with this book with Static, I intentionally wanted to put a lot of panels just to play with pacing and trying to slow down how quickly someone might read the story. I mean, they can read it however they want, but and just challenging myself, like, it's a different way of telling a story. Um, but then Crimson Flower, that one, for whatever reason, I put this pressure on myself. It was never told to me I needed to do this, but I was doing a lot of those pages in either a day or a day and a half, just the entire day. But then some would be like 2 days, and then the rare one would be like 3. So to give you just a general answer, I would say anywhere from a day is rare. A day is that's not easy with the amount of detail, but it's doable. Sometimes I'll surprise myself and think, "Oh, this page is going to take me 2 days at least," and then by the end of the day, I finished it somehow. And then it could go the other way, like, "Oh, this one's not too hard, not too much involved," and then it ends up taking me 3-4 days. So anywhere from a day to like 4 days a page. So yeah.
How did you break into the industry? What was the first thing that you worked on?
Anthology from Image Comics, where I was just the artist, and it was a last minute thing where the other artist backed out, and he just didn't have time, and I had 3 days to draw 5 pages, and I just happened to have those days off somehow, so it was just a miracle that I so that's out there. It's not my best work by any means because it was completely rushed and just I was filling in. That's technically that's the first, but the Freak would be the real like debut. This is my real first book, um, and that was 2019, beginning of 2019 when that came out. But I was working on it the year before, so
I'm curious, Matt. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 28.
Okay, so you're still quite a young man.
Relatively.
Trust me, I'm 42. It's all downhill from 28.
Yeah,
um,
it looks that way. It looks that way.
tell me about Ad House. How did Ad House get involved with publishing The Freak?
I before that, I was just self-publishing everything, just doing my own comics, writing and drawing, and so the Freak was no different. And I self-published just the first chapter as its own issue, and I printed about maybe 100 or so, and I brought it to this convention, Heroes Con. It's probably like my favorite convention I've done, and I've gone back to that one. But I brought it to the show, and I had it on my table, and little did I know the publisher. It's really just one guy. His name is Chris Pitzer, and he happened to stop by my table and buy a copy of it. But I had no idea. I didn't know I didn't know his face or anything. And so a month after that show, I was pitching the Freak around trying to get it published, just the same way I was with the other books before that, but they just never, no one gave it a chance. Um, so I was pitching it around, and Ad House was one of the ones I chose to pitch it to, and I got a response back saying, "I'm actually familiar with this. I got it from you at Heroes Con," and and they liked it, so they gave it a chance, and so that probably gave me a little boost of, it gave me a leg up. Like I had it out there in the world and a little bit, and they were already familiar with it. So yeah, that's how they found me, but then I found them, and it just worked. It just worked that way. So
Now, did you originally intend for the Freak to be separate issues?
yeah, I actually did, but I actually, now that it's one book, I actually like that. It just makes more sense. And well, actually, I just remember now that you said that, it was intended to be a one shot from the beginning. It was just going to be maybe 20, 22 pages. And when I got to uh, maybe midway through the book, or maybe when I was still writing it, I realized, oh wait, no, there's more to this. This is more than I thought it was. And so then I uh, wrote the second, or the next two chapters of it, which were complete. So really, it is a one shot. It's just a 3-part thing, and it's um, but yeah, I don't. I put a tweet out the other day saying, because I really am curious, and I'm thinking about, for my next book, I could kind of go either way with it, but I just said, do people have a preference of format? Like, do people prefer single issues? Do they prefer like just a one contained book, like a trade or a graphic novel? And most people said graphic novel. Most people prefer the trade for one reason or another. It was probably, I'd say, 85% trade, and the other 15 were they liked singles. So, and then a lot of the people who said, a lot of people said, um, uh, I'll buy single issues just to support the book if it's a small creator or a small publisher and I want to support it. So it was almost like a charity case. Like they still didn't even want it. They were just doing it to be nice. So I don't want to rely on that. I just want to give people what they want. And I really, I could go either way. I was thinking for this next book, like maybe single issues, but more pages. Now I'm just kind of thinking everyone wants a graphic novel. That's what everyone wants, I guess. So I'm leaning more that way. But yeah, the Freak, it was just meant to be like a little one shot thing, but it turned out to be what it is.
I'd like to ask you about your approach to panels, your panel to panel storytelling. You said something earlier on about how when you first started reading comics, it was before you could read, so you're just looking at the pictures. In Static and in the Freak, there's very little dialogue in the comics that you write, and so a lot of the storytelling is actually panel to panel, um, gestures. The drama exists without any dialogue.
Right. Um, I don't know. That's just, it's what the story called for. Like it wasn't. I don't know. That's actually a thing that I knew it was the case. I knew that that's the way they were, but I didn't think it was as big of a deal as apparently it is, because a lot of people have been saying that, more so with Static. But I think part of it is both of the stories revolve around protagonists who tend to be isolated, or you know, they're not always around a lot of people, or if they are, they're trying to, like, especially with the Freak, they're trying to not be noticed. Um, there's not a lot of conversation to be had within the story, but yeah, it's just like I said, the story comes first. So even if I wanted to have the comic with a lot of dialogue, if the story didn't call for that, then it just doesn't. So it's not there. The same way the story might call for a scene with, um, I don't know, an airport or something, and I don't want to draw an airport, but the story needs it. So I have to draw it. I have to make it fun. I have to include it in my own way, whatever the story calls for. And that's just it. It always, most of the stories, I'm imagining them before writing anything or drawing anything. I'm just thinking about it, and that's what I thought of. So, um, yeah, I guess that would be my answer. It just, yeah.
But even without the dialogue, there's also very little narration. I mean, there's almost no narration. Um, is it challenging to, um, or is it a challenge that you put on yourself to tell a story with almost no words?
No, no, I think there actually is a lot of writing going on. People might, see, oh, I'm not seeing a lot of words, so I guess there wasn't a lot of writing to be done. But I wrote full scripts for both of these comics. Uh, and
I mean,
Static was,
I'm not trying to suggest that you didn't write these very meticulously, but in terms of your storytelling style, it's almost cinematic. Do you know what I mean? Like
no, I
it's
understand. I understand. I'm just trying to explain that, yeah, it just didn't call for it. And I think a lot of comics, it's, it's sequential storytelling. And so I think people will come to expect that. They might come to expect more dialogue or more explanation because a lot of comics are two people and or a team of people. And maybe we'd have to ask every individual team, but I think sometimes writers, when that's all they're doing, they might feel the need to explain a little more or um, do their part. Maybe they're afraid. I'm just guessing. Maybe they're afraid they're not communicating clearly, or they're afraid the artist won't communicate what it is that's trying to be said. But when it's just me, I'm 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 in the cockpit. I'm controlling everything. It's because that's what comics really are. It just so happens that more often it's two, three, four people bringing this soup together. Everyone's bringing their own ingredients, whereas I'm making my own soup. So I know what this calls for. I know I can communicate something without needing to. I'm writing. I'm doing some. I'm chopping onions. I'm chopping. I'm bringing in spices that maybe you're not even aware are there, but it's still. I made the soup. The soup is telling you. It tastes the way it does on purpose, and if there are three chefs in the kitchen, maybe one chef is a little bit, oh, maybe I should add this, whereas it actually didn't need that for one reason or another. They thought it needed that, but maybe it didn't. But yeah, that's what comics are. It's just, if I had to summarize, but it's it's a combination of all these ingredients: art, writing. The writing doesn't need to be shown. It doesn't need to be, you know, oh, I need to see dialogue or I need to see uh, a narration. It doesn't need to be there. If it doesn't call for it, then it just doesn't need to be there. So it just, I don't know. That's the way it turned out.
So before we move on, I should mention that you got an Eisner nomination for The Freak.
Yeah, yeah. That I I never would have imagined that. It's still pretty surreal. I, when I was asked if I wanted to submit the book to be considered, I just I it was borderline annoying that that was going to have to do it. It's like I guess no one's gonna. This is my little, book that no one even knows about. No one cares. Like, what? So it must not be good. Um, but I shockingly, the fact that I was even nominated, I didn't have to win. That was already. I'm set. I'm set. I'm good. Like, I don't need any more. I mean, it. I don't do it for awards anyway, so it's just. I, yeah, I'm just blown away to this day. When I first got the email saying, um, yes, you've been nominated in this category, it was like grief. It was like the stages of grief. I was in disbelief. Then the next stage was, well, I guess these things don't mean much. Now that I have it, I thought this was, you had to be great. You had to be. I'm not in that caliber. I'm not amongst these people. I'm down here. I'm nobody. But then when I got it, I'm like, well, I guess the awards don't mean anything. But again, that was another level of delusion. That was another level of confusion. Now I'm a little bit more in reality, where it's like, I guess it happened. It's real. I guess that happened. So yeah, that's my answer.
So let's talk about Static. Tell me, let's start with the concept. Tell me a little bit about the book and what it's about.
Um, the concept, essentially, it's about just the state of being stuck in a place. That could be a job, that could be a position in life, that could be anything. That's really what the book is about. That was the concept that I originally, or the dilemma that came to my mind, that I wanted to use the story to explore. And it's a combination of that, but also the comic bookiness, I guess we could call it, with all the craziness on top of it. But that's just kind of, that's the outer texture of the story. That's the there is a story on the surface you can follow, but you might relate to it in your own way. Same way with the Freak. That's how I want my stories to be. There is a story there, but I've been told many different interpretations of how people are taking the story. Um, so yeah, that's really what it. If I had to summarize what the story is really about, that's the main concept. Just being stuck in a cycle or a loop or a state of being and not knowing how to break out of it. And even if you did break out of it, well, now what? That cycle was all I knew. It wasn't good, but now that I'm free of that, where do I go from here? That's all I knew. So I'm starting from nothing if I were to break from it. So that's kind of the thing I wanted to explore with the character of Emmett and the story.
Now, the drawing style for Static is actually quite different from the Freak. Do you consciously adopt different styles for different books? Do you try to
No,
make every, do you try to make everything look separate from each other?
no, it happened to be, that was the evolution phase that I was at that point. I was like a new Pokemon at that point. It kind of like what we were talking about earlier. That's just the phase I was in at the time, and I feel like that book, it was a combination of the choice of doing a lot of small panels, so you don't have a lot of room to necessarily show a ton of detail. Like if you were to do all 3 or 4, maybe even 5 panel pages, you have more room to show more texturing or detail or that kind of thing. But if everything's tiny, you have tiny little panels, everything is shrunken down, so you don't have a ton of room. So that's part of it. But as the story goes on, that's less so the case. But yeah, that was just it wasn't an intentional. Oh, I'm going to draw this one with a different style, so that it just happened to be that way. That's where I was at that point. And it does kind of evolve even through the story. The art style does a little bit change. Like the first chapter, I don't know if people would notice, but the first chapter is one way, and it does get a little more, I guess, bold and more. Yeah, that's the word I would use. It gets a little bit more bold, and yeah. Whereas before it was kind of the in between. Really, this whole art style I was at that point, it's the in between of what I did on the Freak and Crimson Flower. So it was like the transition between those two. So
Now, did the choice to work in color also affect your drawing style or influence the way that you approach the page?
no, because the way I draw every comic, I try to draw it in a way where, because I don't know, again, the story comes first. So I don't know. I'm just worried about that. And I don't know where this thing will land. I don't know if it'll be self-published, if it'll be at a specific publisher and they have their own requirements or guidelines. Oh, this needs to be like this needs to be colored. It needs to be black and white. I don't know. So I just draw in a way where um, I don't know what's going to happen in this when I'm done with it. So I need it to be good as is based on what I'm doing. So the art needs to stand on its own and be finished essentially. So if colors come in after, it just adds to what I do. It's not a thing I'm expecting or relying on. I don't know if they're going to be there or not. It honestly doesn't matter. So if they happen, it'll just have to complement or work with what I'm doing. And if they're not there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from what I've done. Or at least that's the intention. I'm hoping, not even hoping, I'm working in a way that I put enough detail and enough, you know, I put enough there that it stands as a comic on its own. And the colors, if they happen or not, um, that doesn't matter really. It's another level of depth, I guess. It adds another element to it. You know, more mood. It adds to the storytelling. But if 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 they don't happen, that's okay too.
Now, when did you decide that this book was going to be in color? And when did Carlos Padilla, your colorist, get involved?
Um, Actually, similar to the Freak, I self-published the first chapter of Static on its own, and but it was black and white, just because I wanted something new for conventions. But right after that, I decided, all right, let me try to get this because most comics do have color, so I decided, let me try to get a colorist to kind of collaborate with me. Maybe that'll help this get published. So originally, Bill Crabtree actually colored um, probably 5 pages of it, and he knew somebody who knew somebody who could get it in front of the right people at Dark Horse. So we found like this backdoor entrance. That's how it. Static actually, I worked on that before Crimson Flower, so that's how I got in the door there with this book. But then we don't need to go into detail of it, but it didn't end up working with Bill. It was no Um, there was no hard feelings or anything like that because we did Crimson Flower right after. Um, but Dark Horse brought in Carlos to color it because they still liked the story, they still wanted it to happen, but it just didn't work out for one reason or another. Um, and yeah, that's how it happened.
Now, in the story, there are a number of creatures, fictional creatures. Uh, how clear of an idea did you have on how you wanted those creatures to be colored?
That I left that up to him completely. I just for the same thing with pretty much the whole book. I don't really like to tell people. I haven't worked with many colorists, but I would give him notes after um, if something was off from what I was not just off from what I was picturing, because just because I'm picturing something doesn't mean that's the right way for it to be. But if it's, you know, it could be done slightly differently and it would really improve it. From what I would think, I would tell him that. But the creatures themselves, that's what he came up with. That was his vision. That was his palette. Because on top of that, I'm slightly colorblind, so I couldn't do colors if I wanted to. Like I can kind of, you know, I I can. I'm not seeing the world as black and white or gray or whatever, but certain colors I mix up. Like I can't distinguish. I can see it, but like yellows and greens or purples and blues, certain ones I have a hard time distinguishing the two. Um, so I'm not the expert in that. I'm not. That's not my strength in any way. So I just kind of leave that to him. Unless I like I said, if I see something that's this isn't working, or this could be done a slightly different way, I think that would maybe improve it. Can you do this? Do you mind? It's more of like if I think things are clashing, that would be more what I would suggest. But other than that, it's mainly that was his vision for the book.
So you mentioned that you self-published the first issue. I guess what would end up being the first chapter, and there were in total there are 5 chapters, right?
Four chapters.
4 chapters. Was the original intention to publish each separately?
Um, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they were going to be issues. That was my main or my initial plan or hope. But yeah, again, I don't mind that it's a graphic novel. Um, it's still because it's a contained story. So, and I don't plan to do any more of it. So that's how I wrote it. But it works as it is, and it's again, I don't regret it. So um, yeah.
And when did you start working on Static?
Static was beginning of 2019, and that was um, the Freak. I finished working on the Freak probably a few months before that, and then right after the Freak, I started doing this one shot that took me way too long, and it never came out. I don't know why, but so then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna go back to doing my own thing, and I, I had already been thinking about the idea, but I didn't put it in motion in any way. I didn't start writing it or anything until 2019. So it was pretty much right after the Freak, kind of like around that time.
And as you mentioned, Static came out uh, at the end of April, beginning of May, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You want to hold it up to the camera so people can see it?
Oh, sure. This is the
And,
book.
and how does it feel to have it finished? How does it feel to have it in your hands?
It's great. It's great. it that's all I really care about. Like just the fact that I did it. I thought of this crazy idea and it's actually completed and it's here. It's a real thing and people can read it if they want to. Um, yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
So we should mention that Static isn't the only book you have coming out this year. You also have Crimson Flower, which I believe there's 4 issues, and the 4th issue came out a few months ago. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Something like that. Few months ago.
Yeah. And there's going to be a trade for that as well, right?
Yep. I think August, I believe. August or July. So pretty soon.
Okay.
People have been waiting on that. They can look forward to that.
Yeah. And is that also through Dark Horse?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. And what are you working on right now?
Right now, I've started my next my own thing. Um, don't want to give the name yet, but I do have a name. It's I'm actually thinking I'm gonna stick to black and white. It's now I've kind of pivoted. I was thinking, like I said, I was thinking lengthier single issues, but now my mind is more on maybe just like a giant book. But I've never um, I've never had the desire to do anything that was really, ongoing and went on for years and years. But this is the first idea that's come to me where I feel like it kind of fits that. I've always wanted to just do like I have been doing, just kind of complete stories, shorter, complete stories that you could just hold in your hand. Like this is the story. This is it. It's complete. All you need to do, buy this, and you've got it. You're not missing anything. But now this next story, it's but it yeah, it's going to be. My hope is that it'll be a long. This will be kind of like my, I don't know, Savage Dragon or my Walking Dead or my whatever other Berserk. Um, but it'll be a different approach. Just like Static, I went into that doing the small panels and trying to do a lot with one page. This one is going to be capturing a lot of those small moments, or maybe moments of that might get lost between the panels of a lot of comics. You're made to kind of um, assume what happened between each panel. This one, it'll be capturing those moments, but it'll be more pages, but less panels. So it'll give me a chance to show off more of the art, I guess. But you're just going to be flipping a lot, and a scene might last more pages, whereas I guess in Static it might be a scene might be 3, 4, maybe 5 pages. In this one it might be, I don't know, 10 or something like that. But you'll get a better look at the art with this approach. Or at least that's my plan for this story. So that's and then the other thing that makes it different. Pretty much everything I've done up to this point have been stories focused around one character. Even with Crimson Flower, there are other characters, but it's mainly about one. And this new thing I'm working on is more of a group. So that's another new challenge um, that I'm going into this with, where I'm used to doing everything revolving around this one person. Now it's about a group. It's group based with the story. So that's another thing I could say. So, and if people are interested, right now I I've just got character designs, and I'm still not even done with those completely. I've got, they're pretty much narrowed down, but not 100%. And I've got some thumbnails for the first chapter. But if people are curious and they want to see the book as I'm doing it, I'm going to be putting them on my Patreon. Not with any kind of schedule. I'm not trying to rush it or put any pressure on myself that I don't need to, that doesn't need to be there. But as I finish pages, I'm going to be uploading them there. So if you don't mind me throwing that out there.
Absolutely, plug away. Tell everybody how they can follow you online, how they can support your work, and if they want to buy original art, how they can do that as well.
All right. So if they're interested if they've read everything that I have out there and they can't get enough, they're interested in what's next. My Patreon is patreon.com/MattDrawsComics. And I have 2 tiers, but really you just need the one tier. It's $3 a month. So however many pages I get on, you'll see them all, and you'll see, like I said, you can see the process, like the character designs. I have those up right now, and some thumbnails. So that's for what I'm working on now. And then to get probably the easiest way to get these books, you could either order them through your local comic shop if you have one nearby. Just go up to the counter, tell them, hey, I want this book, and they can easily order that for you. But if you don't have that option, actually my Instagram, it's at Matt Draws Comics, no spaces or anything. You can go to my link tree, and there are links to each book, like Static, The Freak, and then there will be options on how to buy it there. And if you're interested in original art from these books, with Static and The Freak, I'm gonna there are some up there, but there are more on the way. And there's a link in that link tree as well for original art. Actually, everything is in that link tree. Patreon, my comics, and original art. It's actually done through inkyknuckles.com. So you can either go to that website or my link tree through Instagram. Then I also have a Twitter. Not really a fan of that website, but I have to use it, I guess. But that's at my name, just my name, at Matt Lesniewski. You'll find my name.
The only good thing about Twitter is that it put the two of us in touch.
That's true. That's true. There are so many connections I've made through it. It's so, as bad as it is, there's equally amount of good that came from it too. So that's what I'm saying. I kind of need to be on there. So you can follow me there, follow me on Instagram, and then Patreon if you're interested in more stuff.
Cool. And people can order the books through Dark Horse as well, right?
Yeah. On their website, darkhorse.com, and if you just search Static or Crimson Flower, they'll both come up, and there'll be options on the side, different options, whatever's easier for you. Yeah. Or adhouse.com for The Freak if that's your preferred method.
Very cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
Thank you for having me on. I have that to say, because no one has to care about my stuff. So the fact that you reached out, I appreciate it.
I like your stuff, man. I was actually going to ask. I was gonna play a game called Off Base or On the Money, which was the first time I saw your work. Tell me if this is off base or on the money.
Okay.
Richard Corbin.
Can I do is there an in between option? Because
Sure.
it's a little more I get
Well,
a lot of people.
your rendering style very much reminds me of Richard Corbin, and some of your figure drawing on Crimson Flower as well. I think there's a um, like a mix of classic cartooning and kind of the grotesqueness. I don't mean that in an offensive way, but
No,
Corbin
no,
had a
no. Yeah,
very distinctive style, and so that's why I thought of Corbin.
I would say on the money. You know what? Forget it. I would say on the money because he is an inspiration for sure. I like his work, and it definitely, obviously, shines through. Yeah, I would say on the money.
Yeah. And the other name, I know the Freak was compared to Mobius, but I thought of Jeff Darrow.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. It's come up a lot. Funny thing you say that. I am a fan of his work, but I think more so what people are seeing with that is um, the open lines and there's not a
Yeah.
lot of lighting or shading or
Yeah.
like
The line work is very similar. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. But it's also your technical drawing. Your technical drawing, you know, it's the technique is almost like the way a draftsman or somebody who would do uh, landscaping work or what do you call it? Interior design.
architecture.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of style of drawing, and I think the two of you have that in common.
I was gonna say, ever since I was a kid, the shading, because I'm self-taught, that would always intimidate me. So I just threw it to the side. I just decided, you know what? I don't even know how to approach that, so I'm not gonna do it. And I think that's more so where people are seeing the similarities. I mean, for sure there are similarities on their own, but I've always drew that way where I didn't put any. It would just be all you would see was the shapes and kind of the figures themselves. There wouldn't be any textures or any, which both of our styles kind of have that. So that's a little bit of an explanation to that too.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.